2024 has been like a shining example for pretty much everybody in the entertainment sphere. What not to do when it comes to different forms of entertainment, whether it be movies, shows, games, all the above. Because we've just seen more and more of these directors and whatnot just push and push and push the whole look at how great, visually stunning, graphically inspiring, if you will, the movies, games are. And they just are completely lacking in every other aspect. And it just goes to show that, yeah, good graphics are really incredible, of course. They're really nice to look at. But that's not the core of what people are looking for when they play these games or watch these movies or shows. They're looking for some substance to it, and especially not the substance that they try to jam pack in there where it just feels so artificial and out of place. It's like, okay, you just have a bunch of really stunning scenes with a bunch of just subpar acting, voice acting, gameplay, whatever. It's I've seen a lot of bigger YouTubers bringing up this point. Asmongold Gold and Maximilian Dude, they've been, I mean, they've been bringing it up for a while, but even more so as we just see more and more of these games come out where it's like all about how visually stunning they are and literally nothing else. Like Hellblade 2, it looks incredible. Like I'll give it that. It looks stunning, but it's a 5 hour game, and it's like an interactive game at that, an interactive movie. And it's like, well, why would I want to pay $50 for a 5 hour interactive movie when I could just at that price buy a couple other games where I can actually play the game, or a couple other shows that I can watch that are like full on movies. It just it just doesn't really seem like that should be the focus. I mean, it really shouldn't, because I mean, you can tell by the sales of these games and these movies that clearly that's not what people are looking for. And this Reddit right here, it's from 7 months ago, really summarizes basically all of it. It says the race for graphical fidelity takes the focus away from gameplay. Sometimes I feel like the focus on graphical fidelity is overshadowing more systematic gameplay elements like destructible environments, fire spread, fluid simulations, etc. And that's just like a really small part of it too, I think. I don't even think that's really the big problem with these games. It's like that's just kind of stuff that happens in the background, a little interactivity, if you will, with the game world itself. But specifically for games, like even just the gameplay itself, the style of the games, like they try and focus so much on just making it 8K where every pixel looks good, but overall the overall style of the game is just not great. Like it just feels out of place. It doesn't feel like you're in a world that really should exist, if you kind of get what I'm saying there. Like it doesn't feel like you're a part of the world. It's the same thing with the I can't remember the name because it's just so horrible. The Rings of Power for the Lord of the Rings. It's a show that looks visually stunning, but everything else just does not even matter. It's just like the only reason I would think that most people even watch it is because it just looks incredible, which I'll give him that. It does. But the acting, the script, the fights, it just is not what it should be. They're focusing so much on how it looks that they're kind of missing out on the set and everything else that should matter, the substance. And that's what the problem with these games nowadays have, is that they're so focused on just making it presentable for like a short ad or whatever, if you have what have you on YouTube, that they just miss the entire point of what the reason the people are playing these games for. The example that gets brought up a lot is like the Dark Souls games. Like if you zoom in, they look not great. Not even by a long shot. Zooming in, looking at the pixel quality, it's like, yeah, it's not great. But it doesn't matter, because that's not the point. It looks okay when you're zoomed out, and in fact, sometimes it looks even great when you're zoomed out, because nobody cares about what the facial expression is of the characters when you're zoomed out in a dialogue screen, because you're not even looking at their face to begin with. Like it doesn't matter. You can hear what's being said, As long as the mouth is like remotely moving like that, it doesn't even have to be lip synced. I mean, it's good enough for me because frankly, I don't really play the games to have like this whole real life, if you will, simulation of what it looks like while you're talking and whatnot. Because even The Witcher, I mean, a game that's super heavily focused on dialogue and stuff like that. I mean, there's not really a lot of lip sync. I mean, if you really pay attention to it and you really focus in, I mean, it doesn't really sync at all. But it doesn't matter because the game is good, the story is really intriguing, and you have the voice acting that kills it. And so it's like when you have all of those together, that's what makes a good game. Especially with the Dark Souls, it's like people play it for the gameplay style. The world that you are in, that it creates. It feels like you should be there. And then you have games like Forspoken where it doesn't really feel like you should be there. I mean, apart from all of the other nonsense that was there with the whole voice acting and the script and the story, I mean, it was just not all that great. But it just didn't really feel like you should have been there. It felt really out of place. At least it did to me. And that was really my main gripe with the game. And they just keep trying to make these visual stunning games that just really have lack of any sort of depth to it in literally any other measure. And that's really why it's so unfortunate to see all these AAA games like just focusing and hammering in on this graphical fidelity. It must be 4K at 60 frames, which I mean it should be, but it shouldn't be the focus. It just shouldn't be the focus. And that's the point that all of these bigger creators are making, and I 100% agree. They're 100% right. It's that you need to have these games, these shows, movies, whatever, that sure, they need to be at least graphically up to par, if you will. Like they need to look somewhat good. You don't want a 64-bit in 2024. I mean, we get that. But you also shouldn't be shooting for like every single pixel highlights and changes color depending on the sun and whatnot. It's like, bro, ain't nobody even looking at the tree in the background. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the only part. Going back to this Reddit right here, they only care about the trees in the background if you can destroy it. And that brings in a whole different aspect of like the background and the environment being interactable and things like that. Like they make these buildings and stuff so visually pleasing and these trees visually pleasing, but you can't do anything with them. You can't interact with them. You can't knock them down or anything in like almost all of these games. Which I mean, I'm not saying you have to, but it's like that's the only time people even are really looking at the trees in any sort of depth, if you're not even really depth. I mean, trees are just meant to be part of the background. Like it just doesn't matter. The focus shouldn't be on 8K. It should be on, is the gameplay good and is the style good? And then go from there, because at the end of the day, that's what matters for the game. And for the movies, is the style of the movie and is the writing of the movie up to par, and then everything else can follow after. That's the focus. Everything else needs to be secondary. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments about it, because I mean it's been a conversation that's been going on for a while now. I mean, even more so lately, because you just see all of these releases being released. Suicide Squad, Hellblade, the list goes on and on and on. And then you have games like Helldivers 2 that doesn't look that great, but it sold a lot of copies because the game's good. Because they focus on the style of the game and the gameplay, and then everything else just needed to be up to at least a certain standard, if you will. And that's the focus. That is what the focus should be. But anyway, if you guys liked the video, make sure to leave a like, and I hope to see you guys around. Peace!